There is a place in the United States where the forest whispers secrets and the darkness hides more than just shadows. The Appalachian Mountains stretch over 2,400 kilometers, cutting through entire states with their dense forests and deep valleys. For centuries, travelers have disappeared without explanation, and those who returned were never the same again. The ancient inhabitants of the region feared what lurked among the trees. Creatures with glowing eyes, beings that mimic human voices, and entities that should not exist. If you think these mountains are just beautiful landscapes, get ready. Today you will learn about the 10 most terrifying supernatural creatures of the Appalachians. But first, like the video so the channel can continue posting content like this, and subscribe to the channel. Just one more warning. After this video, you might think twice before venturing into the forest alone. Creature 1, the snallygaster, the winged dragon of the Appalachian Mountains. In the dense woods and mountains of the Appalachian Mountains, between the states of Maryland and Pennsylvania, a legendary creature has haunted the imagination of local residents for centuries. Known as the snallygaster, this being is described as a terrifying mix of bird, reptile, and demon. Its appearance is as peculiar as its name, a scaly body, resembling that of a dragon, enormous wings that produce a deafening sound when flapping, and a beak filled with sharp teeth. Some accounts even mention a single hypnotic eye in the center of its forehead, capable of petrifying anyone who gazes directly into it. The origin of the snallygaster dates back to the early German settlers, who established themselves in the region in the 18th century. They brought with them tales of mythological creatures, such as the Schneller Geist, swift spirit, which is believed to have evolved into the American snallygaster. The creature gained fame in the early 20th century when local newspapers published accounts of sightings, fueling both fear and curiosity among the population. In 1909, the Fisher family, who lived near Frederick, Maryland, claimed to have been attacked by a winged creature during the night. According to the account, the snallygaster allegedly tore through the roof of their house, emitting a piercing screech that echoed throughout the area. Residents described the being as a massive shadow with glowing eyes and sharp claws. The incident was so impactful that even former President Theodore Roosevelt reportedly considered hunting the creature, though he never publicly confirmed it. In 1932, a farmer named Jeb Carter from the South Mountain region reported a terrifying encounter while tending to his cattle. He described a gigantic creature that descended from the sky, attacking one of his cows. According to Jeb, the snallygaster used its claws to lift the animal and vanished into the clouds, leaving behind only bloodstains and enormous feathers. The case was widely publicized at the time, and many hunters ventured into the area in search of the creature, without success. Creature 2, Bigfoot, the giant of North American forests. In the vast and untouched forests that stretch across the United States and Canada, a legend has persisted for centuries, fueled by sightings, gigantic footprints, and stories passed down through generations. Known as Bigfoot or Sasquatch, this being is described as a humanoid creature, covered in thick, dark fur, standing over 2 meters tall, and possessing immense strength. Its feet, which can measure up to 60 centimeters in length, leave indelible marks in the damp soil of the forests. The origin of Bigfoot is deeply rooted in the traditions of indigenous peoples of North America. For many tribes, such as the Salish, the Sasquatch is not just a physical creature, but a guardian spirit of the forests, a being that exists between the material and spiritual worlds. With the arrival of European settlers, these stories blended with local folklore, gaining new layers of mystery and fascination. In 1958, in the Bluff Creek region of Northern California, a worker named Jerry Crew made a discovery that would forever change the history of Bigfoot. While working on a dirt road, he found a series of gigantic footprints, measuring over 40 centimeters in length. The marks, clearly imprinted in the soil, appeared to belong to a bipedal creature of colossal proportions. Jerry made plaster casts of the footprints, and the images quickly spread through newspapers, catapulting Bigfoot into the spotlight. This incident is considered one of the early milestones in the modern search for the creature. One of the most famous and controversial accounts occurred in 1967 in the Bluff Creek Forest of California. Roger Patterson and Bob Gimlin, two Bigfoot hunters, claimed to have filmed the creature as it walked near a river. The video, known as the Patterson-Gimlin film, shows a large, hairy figure with long arms and a clearly bipedal posture. Despite countless analyses and debates over the years, the video has never been definitively proven to be a hoax, keeping the mystery alive. Many believe that this footage is the most compelling evidence of Bigfoot's existence. Bigfoot remains one of the greatest enigmas of cryptozoology. Whether an unknown primate, a spiritual manifestation, or simply a legend, its imposing presence in the North American forests endures in the popular imagination, challenging science and fueling the curiosity of mystery hunters around the world. Creature 3: Mysterious Lights, Supernatural Phenomena in the Skies of the Appalachians. In the valleys and mountains of the Appalachian Mountains, an inexplicable phenomenon has intrigued residents and visitors for centuries. Known as the mysterious lights, these apparitions are described as luminous spheres that float in the air, changing color, size, and direction unpredictably. They primarily appear in remote areas, far from the light pollution of cities, and seem to defy any scientific explanation. To some, they are the spirits of ancient inhabitants of the region. To others, they are signs of extraterrestrial activity. The origin of the mysterious lights is as hazy as the phenomenon itself. Some indigenous legends speak of lost souls wandering the mountains, while other stories suggest that the lights are the result of natural gases released from the ground. Regardless of the explanation, the mystery persists, fueling the imagination of all who witness the spectacle. One of the most famous cases occurred in 1920 near Brown Mountain, North Carolina. A group of railroad engineers reported seeing a series of bright lights floating above the mountain. The lights, which seemed to pulse in shades of red and blue, would disappear and reappear in different locations without any discernible pattern. The phenomenon was so striking that the US government even sent a team of scientists to investigate. Despite their efforts, no conclusive explanation was found, and the lights continue to appear to this day. Creature 4: Ghosts and Spirits, Invisible Presences in the Appalachian Mountains. In the shadows of old wooden cabins, along the hallways of abandoned mansions, and on the dark trails of the Appalachian Mountains, stories of ghosts and spirits are as common as the wind, whispering through the trees. These apparitions, often described as ethereal figures, disembodied voices, or inexplicable sensations, are an integral part of the local culture. For many, they represent souls trapped between the world of the living and the dead, whether due to unresolved tragedies, lost loves, or simply a refusal to move on. The Appalachian region, with its rich history of colonization, wars, and rural life, is fertile ground for reports of paranormal activity. From the spirits of Civil War soldiers to the ghosts of pioneers who never left their land, each story carries an emotional weight and a mystery that defies logic. In Gatlinburg, a small town in the Appalachian Mountains, there is a legend that has persisted for decades: the apparition of a woman dressed in white, who appears on the side of deserted roads, especially on full moon nights. They say she was a woman who lost her husband and children in a car accident in the 1920s and has since wandered the region in search of her family. Drivers report catching a glimpse of her, only for her to disappear moments later. Some even claim that she appears in the back seat of their cars, leaving behind a trail of cold and a feeling of deep sadness. The Battle of Chickamauga, one of the bloodiest of the American Civil War, left deep scars on the region. Today, the Chickamauga and Chattanooga National Military Park is known not only for its historical significance, but also for its paranormal activity. Visitors and staff report hearing distant screams, the footsteps of marching soldiers, and even seeing figures dressed in Union and Confederate uniforms wandering the fields. One of the most striking accounts is from a group of tourists who swore they saw a ghostly figure on horseback galloping toward them before disappearing into thin air. Creature 5, the Grafton Monster, the terrifying beast of West Virginia. In the dense woods and isolated valleys of West Virginia, a legendary creature haunts the dark and silent nights. Known as the Grafton Monster, this being is described as a colossal figure, standing over 3 meters tall, with a robust body covered in glowing white fur. Its eyes, deep and shadowy, seem to reflect a sinister intelligence, while its heavy footsteps echo through the forest, leaving deep marks in the ground. What terrifies local residents the most, however, is the silence that surrounds it. They say the Grafton Monster makes no sound, moving like a gigantic invisible shadow. The legend of the Grafton Monster gained prominence in 1964 when a young man named Robert Cockrell claimed to have seen the creature while driving on a rural road near the town of Grafton. Since then, sporadic sightings have fueled fear and curiosity, turning the creature into an icon of local folklore. The first official account of the Grafton Monster occurred in June 1964, when Robert Cockrell, a 23-year-old man, was driving along a rural road near the Tygart River. Suddenly, he spotted a massive, white, faceless figure standing by the side of the road. The creature, which he described as something out of a nightmare, did not move, only watched the car pass with its dark, penetrating eyes. Robert sped away from the scene, but the image of the creature haunted him for years. His account was published in the local newspaper, and soon other residents began sharing similar stories. In 1970, an experienced hunter named Thomas Jackson was exploring the forests near Grafton when he came across something he would never forget. While following a trail, he heard a muffled sound, as if something enormous was moving through the trees. As he approached, he spotted a white, faceless creature with long, disproportionate arms. The creature let out a low grunt and began moving toward him. Thomas, armed only with a shotgun, fired into the air, startling the creature, which disappeared into the dense vegetation. He swore never to return to that area again. Creature 6, the Talipo, the night creature that never forgets. In the depths of the dark forests of the Appalachian Mountains, where the wind whispers ancient secrets and the moon can barely pierce the canopy, a small but terrifying creature haunts the nights. Known as the Talipo, this entity is described as a creature resembling a dog or a cat, but with glowing eyes and a long, hairy tail. However, what makes the Talipo truly terrifying is not its appearance, but its obsession with reclaiming what belongs to it, its tail. The legend of the Talipo is a cautionary tale, told to remind people of the dangers of intruding into the natural world and disturbing what they do not understand. It is said that the creature is relentless in its pursuit, and those who cross its path rarely live to tell the tale. The first account dates back to the year 1800, when an old solitary hunter lived in a cabin in the Appalachian woods. One night, while cooking his meager meal, he heard a noise outside his cabin. Upon investigating, he spotted a small, strange creature with eyes that glowed like embers. Without thinking twice, the hunter attacked the creature with his machete, cutting off its hairy tail. The creature fled into the forest, screaming in a high-pitched, unsettling voice, "Talipo! Talipo! Give me back my Talipo!" That night, the hunter was awakened by scratching at the door of his cabin. The high-pitched voice echoed again, "Talipo! Talipo! I want my Talipo!" He ignored the sound, but the next day, the creature returned, this time entering through the window. The hunter fought bravely, but by the end of the night he had disappeared, leaving behind only his empty cabin and the severed tail. They say the Talipo never forgets and never forgives. In the 1920s, in a small rural community in the Appalachians, a family reported a terrifying encounter with the Talipo. They had found a strange creature on their property, and unaware of the danger, decided to capture it. After cutting off part of its tail, the creature fled, but not before shouting the famous phrase, "Taily-po, taily-po, give me back my taily-po." That night, the family heard scratching on the walls and a voice whispering outside. The creature entered the house, and despite the family's efforts to defend themselves, the taily-po reclaimed its tail, leaving behind a trail of destruction and fear. Since then, the family never spoke of the incident again, but the story spread throughout the region, serving as a warning to all. Creature 7, Flatwoods Monster, the star visitor of West Virginia. On a dark September night in 1952, in the small town of Flatwoods, West Virginia, an extraordinary event occurred, leaving a permanent mark on local folklore and the history of ufology. Known as the Flatwoods Monster, or Monster of Flatwoods, this creature is described as a tall figure over 3 meters in height, wearing a kind of metallic cloak or skirt. Your face, however, is what terrifies the most. A heart-shaped head with bright and hypnotic eyes, and a body that seems to float above the ground. The creature left behind a trail of fear and mystery, as well as a pungent smell of sulfur that permeated the air that night. The Flatwoods incident is one of the most well-documented accounts of encounters with strange creatures, involving credible witnesses and a scenario that blends elements of UFOs and supernatural beings. It all began with the May family on September 12, 1952, when a group of children and teenagers, led by Kathleen May, spotted a bright light crossing the sky and landing on a nearby hill. Curious, they decided to investigate, taking with them a flashlight and a dog. As they approached the site, they noticed a strange mist and a strong smell of sulfur. It was then that the dog began barking frantically, and the group saw a huge, terrifying figure emerge from the darkness. The creature, with its glowing face and dark body, seemed to float toward the group. The witnesses described feeling a burning sensation in their throats and eyes, along with a paralyzing fear. They fled the scene, but the image of the monster remained etched in their minds. The account was so impactful that it attracted the attention of national media and investigators of paranormal phenomena. Shortly after the incident, journalist A. Lee Stewart Jr. from the Braxton Democrat was one of the first to arrive at the scene. He found strange marks on the ground and a strong sulfur smell that lingered in the area. Stewart interviewed the witnesses and published a series of articles about the case, helping to spread the story of the Flatwoods Monster across the country. Although initially skeptical, he admitted that there was something inexplicable about that night, something that defied logic and science. Creature 8, Sheepsquatch, the ovine beast of the Appalachians. In the dense woods and isolated mountains of West Virginia, a peculiar and terrifying creature is part of local legends. Known as Sheepsquatch, this being is described as a grotesque mix of man, sheep, and bear. Standing about 2 meters tall, its body is covered in dirty white fur, and its head resembles that of a ram, with curved horns and glowing eyes. However, its odor is what stands out the most, a nauseating stench of rotting flesh that precedes its appearance. The legend of Sheepsquatch gained traction in the 1990s when reports of sightings began to emerge in various parts of the Appalachians. For some, it is a supernatural creature, for others an animal unknown to science. Whatever the truth may be, Sheepsquatch continues to haunt the forests and the imagination of those who hear its stories. In 1994, a group of hunters was exploring the forest near the town of Boone, North Carolina, when they encountered something they would never forget. As they followed a trail, they heard a strange sound, similar to the bleating of a sheep, but much louder and distorted. As they approached, they spotted a white, hairy creature with curved horns and red eyes that glowed in the darkness. The creature let out a guttural roar and charged toward the group, who fled in panic. One of the hunters swore he saw the creature rise onto 2 legs like a bear before disappearing into the forest. In 1999, a driver traveling along a rural road in West Virginia reported a terrifying encounter with the Sheepsquatch. He described a large white creature with horns and a sheep-like appearance standing in the middle of the road. The creature stared directly at the car, emitting a high-pitched screeching sound before moving with surprising speed into the dense vegetation. The driver claimed that the smell left by the creature was so strong that he had to stop the car and vomit. Creature 9, Wampus Cat, the feline spirit of the Appalachians. In the depths of the forests of the Appalachian Mountains, where the air is thick with mystery and shadows seem to come alive, a legendary creature haunts the nights. Known as the Wampus Cat, this being is described as a large feline creature with glowing eyes that reflect the moonlight and a howl that echoes through the valleys. It is said to be a mix of a wildcat and a spirit, capable of moving silently among the trees and haunting the dreams of those who dare disturb its territory. The legend of the Wampus Cat has roots in the indigenous traditions of the region, where it is seen as a guardian of the forests and a symbol of power and mystery. For some, it is a real creature. For others, a spiritual manifestation that protects the secrets of nature. In 1930, a lumberjack working in the forests near Chattanooga, Tennessee, reported a terrifying encounter with the Wampus Cat. He described a large creature, similar to a cougar, but with eyes that glowed like fire and fur that seemed to change color under the moonlight. The creature watched him for several minutes, emitting a low, guttural sound before disappearing into the darkness. The lumberjack swore he would never return to that part of the forest, and his story quickly spread throughout the local community. In 1960, a group of young people traveling along a dirt road in the mountains of North Carolina reported a frightening encounter with the Wampus Cat. They described a large feline creature with glowing eyes and a howl that seemed to come from all directions at once. The creature followed them for several miles, always keeping a safe distance but never completely disappearing. When they finally reached an inhabited area, the creature vanished, leaving behind only the sound of the wind in the trees. Creature 10, Mothman, the winged messenger of Point Pleasant. In the fall of 1966, the small town of Point Pleasant, West Virginia, became the stage for a series of events that would forever change its history. Along the banks of the Ohio River, a strange and terrifying creature began to appear, leaving behind a trail of fear and mystery. Known as the Mothman, this being is described as a humanoid figure over 2 meters tall, with enormous wings and glowing red eyes that seem to hypnotize those who gaze into them. Its appearance is often associated with tragic events or premonitions, leading many to believe it is a messenger of fate. The legend of the Mothman gained international fame after the collapse of the Silver Bridge in 1967, which resulted in the deaths of 46 people. Many believe the Mothman was an omen of the tragedy, appearing repeatedly in the months leading up to the disaster. The first official report of the Mothman occurred on November 15, 1966, when 2 young couples were driving near an area known as the TNT area, an abandoned munitions factory. They spotted a large dark figure with glowing red eyes, which began chasing their car at high speed. The creature, which they would later name Mothman, flew silently, following the vehicle for several miles before disappearing. The account was so impactful that it attracted the attention of the media and paranormal investigators. The day after the first sighting, a young teacher named Connie Carpenter was driving home when she saw a huge figure with wings and red eyes hovering over a hill. The creature watched her for a few moments before taking off and disappearing into the night sky. Connie described the Mothman as a terrifying yet hypnotic presence, as if it were trying to convey a message. Her account was one of many that emerged during those days, solidifying the Mothman legend in popular culture. The Appalachian Mountains, with their dense forests, deep valleys, and towering peaks, are more than just a stunning natural backdrop. They are a stage for stories that defy reason and fuel the imagination. From the silent shadows of the Snallygaster to the glowing eyes of the Mothman, Each creature and phenomenon carries with it a mystery that transcends time and science. Are these stories merely legends, products of human imagination and the isolation of rural communities? Or is there something more, something that science has yet to explain? The giant footprints of Bigfoot, the eerie howls of the wampus cat, the inexplicable lights that dance in the night sky, all of it reminds us that the world still holds secrets that may never be fully revealed. And it is precisely this uncertainty that keeps us fascinated. Because deep down, we all want to believe that there is something beyond what we can see and touch. That somewhere in the shadows of the forests or in the darkest corners of the mountains, inexplicable creatures and phenomena continue to exist, challenging our understanding of the world. So the next time you find yourself on a deserted road under the moonlight of the Appalachians, hear a strange sound, or spot a shadow that shouldn't be there, remember, mystery is always lurking, and perhaps, just perhaps, you might be the next witness to something that can never be explained. What do you think is out there, waiting to be discovered?